iCloud, of cloud storage space. So I'll sort that out, but I'll just record to my local computer and then I'll figure it out during the week. Fantastic. So I'll hand over to Paul in a second and he can take it from here. So as everyone knows, since I've started doing this, I've not only been sort of reaching out to people I know through just my own industry experience, but also you tend to meet like-minded people who want to help and who are lovely people. In fact, I'd say Paul's one of the loveliest people I think I've met via LinkedIn. So I'll put in the cap there. And
you're really butchering me up now, aren't you?
But also, you know, people who have got good scene experience and who have got different takes on the industry. Everyone has their own approach to projects based on their background, based on their philosophies, based on their personalities, experience, etc. And Paul can probably bring a lot more to the conversation than I can in certain aspects as well. So it's great, always great to hear someone else's viewpoints on stuff. So with that, I will hand over to Paul and he can crack on. And I will probably be on mute most of it because my kids still aren't in bed. I don't like to disturb anything. But Paul, if you want to just take over, then I'll
yeah. Okay. So let me do that. Okay, can everyone see my screen?
Yeah.
A bit about me, yeah?
Yeah.
Fantastic. Great. Well, really nice to virtually meet you all. I just thought I'd start off with a bit about me. I'm originally from Nottingham. I've lived in London now for about 20 years, currently living in Hampton with my wife and 2 kids. And yeah, I've probably been in the industry about 20 years now, so specialising in leadership, strategy, design and research. And I thought before I get into my process today, I'll just show you some of the, I suppose, the key areas show my experience over the years. I've had quite an interesting portfolio, I think. So initially I worked at Sky TV for 15 years. And my remit changed quite a bit over those 15 years. So initially looking at Sky Vegas, lots of slot machines and gambling games, that sort of thing. So persuasive design, game mechanics, did that for about 5 years. Then moved on to Sky News, a lot of experimental ways of working, interaction design, lots of nice timelines and transitions and that sort of thing. And then over to Sky Go, so looking more at scalable design, multi-platform, so looking at Sky Go on web, Android, iOS, and also games console, Xbox, I think we were looking at the time. And then finally, looking at more kind of brand governance role at Sky, so working really closely with the brand team, looking at brand portals and asset management systems, so real nice mix there. I'm currently working for Donata Travel Group. I'm head of UX design and research for those guys. And I look after about 7 or 8 different travel brands, all specializing in different areas with different customer bases. And I've got a team distributed across Kingston, London, Preston, and I've got a guy in St. Petersburg, and they're all kind of covering most of these kind of UX disciplines. So design systems, design sprints, testing, animation, that sort of thing. So my approach to UX strategy, me and the team follow a design thinking process all the way. So empathizing with customers, defining and consolidating that research, ideating through design sprint workshops, really big on that at Donata, prototyping and then testing and continuing that process. Now today, I was chatting to Giles about some areas to concentrate on. And I think we decided on a couple of research case studies today. So I thought I'd just take you through a discovery workshop and a customer journey mapping project.
Fantastic. So
discovery workshop, this was for travel bags. Travel bags specialise in tailor-made holidays. These are like long haul holiday destinations, round the world trips. These are trips of a lifetime. People sometimes travel for 2 years. It's people with a lot of money, older people, like 50 to 65, I think is the kind of persona type. And the project really was to look at redesigning their continent, country, region, and city pages. And the aim here was to help customers find inspiring and valuable content to trigger them to book a package holiday. So we're looking at better SEO rankings on Google, obviously conversions in there, customers really like to call up to book, so it's finding that balance of inspirational content and then triggers to call agents to book. So we decided to run a discovery workshop. The objectives really were to understand the different content types that customers find inspiration from, and then kind of focusing on different expectations of inspirational and informational content, and understanding the triggers of when customers needed to actually, you know, call to book. How much information did they need? What was that sweet spot? And were there any differences between different segments? And in terms of the participants that we recruited, we like to get a mix of loyalists, so people that have booked with Travel Bag before, and competitors, so direct competitors here. We've got Intrepid and Trailfinders, so a real nice mix of people. And in terms of the workshop study structure for this one, initially we started off with the focus group. Actually, we usually start off with focus groups, so really nice way to kind of to get participants to talk about their past holiday experiences. Is a bit of an icebreaker. What kind of holidays have you taken over the past 6 months? Why did you choose that particular brand? What interests you in these types of holidays, etc., etc. So it's a nice introduction to the session.
Out of interest there, Paul, do you ever find any issues with focus grouping at all? Do you ever have any bad experiences with them?
With what? Sorry, with
focus grouping.
Not really. I mean, we use, actually I'll show you that in the next part, that we use a company called People for Research who source our participants, and we've never had any. Are you talking about kind of angry arguments and that sort of thing, or? Yeah,
or sometimes you can get people who do overpower a group, and it does get a bit. You feel some people go and then end up as wallflowers a little bit. I mean, I've experienced that before, and you know, I was wondering if you'd ever encountered that yourself.
There's always a couple that are a bit more talkative, but then you obviously get to know people's names and you try to bring them into the conversation if they are a bit quiet and you're not getting enough information out of them. So you know, we usually find ways, and actually when we go, I'll take you through the other exercises, there's other ways for them to kind of input into the sessions. We're also quite interested to find out preferred brand values, so looking at Travel Bag but also their direct competitors. What were we gave them like a set of 20 cards depicting different qualities and values, and we got them to pick kind of the top 3 values that they expected from their brand, and this was the results of that actually. So they wanted definitely a brand that was informative, interesting, high-end, inspirational and unique, and I think Travel Bag on the whole kind of ticks all of those boxes. I think people, I think they've been going for about 40 years, and they're quite established. People actually, you know, think of them as kind of industry leaders. There's a lot of experts there helping them get their tailor-made holidays, that sort of thing. So that kind of works out quite well. The next part was more about understanding expectations, motivations and actions during the booking process. So this is a wall mapping exercise. So we get initially participants to talk about each of the inspiration, searching and booking stages of a holiday, and then writing down on post-its their expectations. So for example, here, inspiration, like they expect to see a wide range of categories or lots of destinations. Their motivations, like what's motivating them to get inspiration, so they might be in need of some relaxation, and actions like you know, how do they get that inspiration, like reading reviews. So this is fine because initially you're doing it on your own. So if you are a bit of a quiet person, you can actually just get your ideas down and get them on the post-its and map them out. And then at the end, there's a bit more of a discussion, so a bit of a group discussion again to go through that. And finally, so they've been talking about holidays for the whole session. This is usually a 2-hour session, by the way. And we get them to actually work in pairs and do a co-creation exercise where they're actually creating their ultimate inspirational page, and they've got pictures and Sharpies to do that. So obviously they're not designers, but we're trying to get an understanding of the key elements that they need to see. So you can see like some of them written down, interactive map with clickable areas, and they've got some nice, beautiful images there. I always find this quite interesting.
Blueprint for content creation, I suppose, isn't it?
What's that? Sorry.
Sort of a good sort of blueprint for content creation, really.
Yeah, definitely. And I just thought I'd put this slide in. So in the sessions, we've usually got two people, the facilitator and there's someone who's taking the notes, and we're using Google Docs just to kind of go through that and take the notes there. At the same time, we usually run a survey as well to a larger group of people just to get the numbers in there. And so actually at the end of the after the workshops and the survey, we usually do put together a debrief and present back the findings. And for this one, we actually create some proto-personas. So we had these two distinct customer types: the activity-led customers. They're more driven by local offerings and things to do. So they want to find an activity first, then think of the destinations, and then decide on the destination, trip details and book. And then the other one is more destination focused. So find a destination and find things to do and decide on the trip details. So this plus the kind of end document was used in the next part of the project. So I'll skip through this briefly, but I could do it in another session if you wanted to learn more about design sprints. It's something we do a lot of across Donata. And so we take all of that information, bring it into the design sprint. And design sprint, we try and get a mix of a representative from each of the teams. So obviously UX, data, marketing, product. We get MDs. You guys probably have done design sprints before, so I'm not sure of your. Yeah,
you're talking about the 5-day Google design sprint concept.
That's right. Yeah, we usually do it in about 2 days. So try and consolidate it, because what we find is getting that amount of people in a room for 5 days is quite expensive to the business. So getting key stakeholders at least for a day or half a day just to get them all together is usually what we can manage, actually.
We've often, it's interesting that in-house you found that as a problem. But back in my agency days, it was a nightmare trying to get design sprints for clients, because of course they couldn't understand the value of dedicating their staff, and we try and dedicate our staff. And ironically, at the moment now, the company I'm working for, we're just trying to start a design sprint. They did one back in July, which we really well. They wanted another one. And someone said, "Oh, can we get everyone together and do it on the 9th of November?" And trying to coincide everyone's diaries for 5 days within that amount of time is going to be. So I think the idea of a two-day one is more of a Usain Bolt design sprint, but I think that's got value to it.
I think the first 3 days you can definitely consolidate it into a day if you're really kind of strict with them, and it does seem to work. Obviously, the prototyping and testing, you can spread that out. I think once it's that initial, the initial morning session when you've got you're going through all the research and the data, and you're doing the lightning talks, and that's kind of key for where everyone should be. Then after that, if stakeholders do need to go out, that's fine. You've got that morning session.
And like you say, the prototyping and testing doesn't necessarily have to involve everyone. People can dedicate 2 or 3 days, and then they can bugger off, and you can spin the rest out for a few days if you want to, and they can reconvene next week and look at the results.
Exactly, that's what we do, actually. Yeah. Sometimes, because it can be quite stressful trying to fit it all into that 5 days. It's just a framework, I think, and you adapt it to what suits your company, really.
Cool. No, but I will. It didn't escape me. You did offer to come and do a test on that session on that, so I think we'd all value that. So
okay, yeah,
no booked in on that one.
Here's just an example of the prototypes that were tested. So we're looking at Thailand holidays, kind of testing different levels. So Thailand, Bangkok, and then there's another level as well. And then these are actually the final pages that went out in August. So what we've got here is a balance of beautiful photography mixed with not too much text, because I think initially some of the prototypes were too text heavy, and that was because SEO came in and just wanted everything in there, and it was just too much. It was overwhelming. So what we tried to do is just chunk up this information, and then you've got on the third module down is your kind of things to do module, which you can easily see things to do, and then we've got your kind of call to book, call to action quite high up the page as well. And that's just showing the responsive Bangkok city pages. So this went out in August, but because of COVID and we're not getting the numbers really, the bookings through at the moment. So I've got no figures that I can share on this stuff. It's still early days. We need, bookings to start going up a little bit more, I think. Okay, so that's Travel Bag. I'm going to move to the customer journey mapping exercise now with Travel Republic.
That's pretty.
This is more Travel Republic and more kind of European-based holidays, predominantly Spain, Greece, Turkey, a little bit of Dubai in there. Price is probably the biggest point here. Like they get some really good deals. That's what customers are looking for. And this project really was trying to get a deep understanding of user journey preferences of our key traveller segments, so couples, families, singles, and groups. And that's throughout the planning, booking, travelling, and post-travel steps. And trying to understand what they do, think, and need, how they feel at every point of the journey. And ultimately just trying to create a more personalised experience for customers going forward. And we had loads of research objectives, but just a few here. So how do users get inspired, where to travel, what defines a travel budget, how do they decide where and when to book, what satisfies or disappoints users during their journey. And I just threw an example of the screen here. So yeah, People for Research of the company we used, and they've really, I think they do seem to get some really quality participants. So obviously we're trying to get a real good mix of couples that represent couples, family, and solo and groups. And again, we're trying to mix up Travel Republic loyalists and competitors as well. So actually there's quite a few interviews here. We've got a lot of people in just to do this session. So in terms of the interview study structure, again, always start off with that icebreaker at the start. So trying to get them to talk about their last holiday, get users in that traveling frame of mind, and then just some example questions here. When was the last time you booked a trip? Do you usually book trips for yourself or for others? That sort of stuff. And what was really interesting is, as part of this session, we bought one of these Empatica E4 wristbands, which is a bit like a Fitbit. So we can measure things like heart rate, temperature, stress levels, that sort of thing. And we just had a theory about, as people kind of talk about the holiday journey, their kind of emotions would change. We just thought it was quite interesting. Probably just a bit too much budget on our hands at that point.
Well, it's quite a nice idea, though. We speak in this group a lot about. I'm always advocating the idea of playing on people's emotions, which is very key when it comes to purchasing things and making decisions. And they can influence user journeys in a much more irrational way than anything that can logically measure it. So, just playing around with that sort of technology in decision making around holidays could get some fascinating results, and it's just fun as well, isn't it? So, I mean,
it was a bit of fun, actually. Yeah, I mean, we found that when people are talking about the airport part of the journey, that's one of the most stressful parts of the travel journey, and definitely, stress levels were going up a little bit at that point. So
I must admit, the whole week you appreciate with kids as well, getting there and getting everything unpacked, getting the card done. I'm happy when I'm sitting in either a bar with a beer or a coffee shop with a coffee. Everything's done, and that's it. Then all I do is kind of play. That's my happiness.
It's a bit like a lie detector. Can you use it for that reason as well?
Maybe, actually, yeah. Maybe that's the next level for it. So after the kind of introduction, we got them to just talk about the journey in a little bit more detail. So we obviously broke up that journey into the inspiration search, booking, pre-trip, flight sections. And as they were talking about this, we showed them some pictures to kind of stir up emotional associations with each part of the journey. And we also were using this Plutchik wheel of emotions, just to give a bit of a visual way of talking about their emotions, which actually helps. So they just pointed at different parts of the emotions. So that's quite good. Just here's a screenshot. Obviously I've covered her face a little bit here so you can't see her, but yeah, she's wearing the wristband here and going through that journey, and you can see her readings there at the top. Again, we've got a note taker in the room, so someone's just typing away, taking notes as they go through that session. And a survey again as well was sent out to a larger customer base just to get those figures. And actually we use Airtable at Donata as our kind of research hub repository. So any sessions across any of the brands, it's all input into here, and actually we can use it for lots of different brands. So this is your kind of one-stop shop for any insight that's been gathered over the past couple of years. So with all that information, then the guys started to consolidate that into separate journey maps for couples, families, groups. And they took over the offices and did a bit of a post-it mapping session, which was quite interesting. And then once that was finalized, we got one of the designers just to make it all look pretty. I'll just zoom in on some of those elements. So obviously you've got the different stages at the top, what the segments kind of objectives are for each of those stages, their motivations. And we got a bit of it. We hired a storyboard artist just to help bring the journey map to life a little bit.
You have some good budget on that one.
What's that, sorry?
You have some good budget on that one. I was going to ask you.
Yeah. And then we got the actions and feelings graph here, which again, this was coming from the wristband helped with this sort of information, and the emotion chart as well. So it's quite boring sometimes searching for holidays. It's quite stressful if you're doing it for lots of other people, if your family, if you're the main person who's booking. But also you've got that feeling of ecstasy, exhilaration just before your trip. You're excited about it. And then just showing you the different channels, the multi-channel experience at the bottom, and the different touch points there. And then, so after the project, we had one for each of the different key segments, and we've been using them ever since, really. So I would say we concentrate more on kind of couples and family bookers because they're our main kind of bread and butter. But it's really kind of helped us when we're looking at new ways to improve our offering, really. And Travel Republic released a new adaptive booking experience over the summer. That little filter your results, that little what we call quick filters bar, is a more kind of a personalized way of customers seeing their results, and that actually came out from that customer journey mapping session. So just lots of, I think what it's brought to the table is it's a good reference point for UX team, but other teams, marketing teams, product teams, just to use as a way to get inspiration for new ideas. Okay, that's it, guys.
That was great.
Thank
that
you.
was really, really thorough, really interesting stuff. It's taken, you can really see all the different sorts of stuff. I mean, a lot of it is stuff I'm familiar with. I haven't done all of it. I'm sure that, just demonstrating the length and breadth of the sort of detail you go into will be fascinating for the people watching at home. I'll just quickly check the chat, folks, if anyone's got any questions. But in the meantime, if anyone's got any, please do fire away. And
I really like the look of it. The map was it's just really nice. It's full of information, but it's really quite easy on the eye as well. I just wonder, is that a map you created yourselves, or is it one I can kind of view? It's just quite inspired by it, really.
Oh, well, that's great to hear. We actually created it ourselves because initially we were looking at some of those online tools. Is there one called UX Pressia or something like that?
Yeah,
there's a few.
Snapply as well.
Yeah, there's a few of them that we saw, but we thought they were quite basic, and we wanted to. We just wanted something that was a bit more kind of lively and a bit more interesting to look at, really. So we obviously did a lot of competitor research and looked at the way that journey maps were constructed and designed, but we wanted to create something that was a bit unique to Travel Republic. So
really
yeah.
Have you had a question about the SEO? Because UX, UI, you always talk about being lean, being kind of refined, as less information is better, less is more, etc. But with SEO, you have to put as much information
I know.
I've got sites before where I've just rammed it full of as much phrase keywords as possible, and it just ends up being a dialogue that's too much. But you've got that conflict, haven't you, between SEO and being lean at the same time. How does that kind of work?
I think it's just an understanding of both disciplines, because I know the SEO director at Donata really well, and we both got an understanding of UX and SEO. And actually, she's listened to a lot of the kind of workshops and user testing, so she kind of understands where the customer coming from. And we just think of ways maybe sometimes to hide that. Maybe, you know, some of the keywords are further down the page, hidden in the footer or something like that. So what we found from that session, from that project, was not, you know, too much information. It just is too much for the customer. They don't want to read. They're not going to read it.
No.
They just want a quick summary, some bullet points, that sort of thing.
It also helps to have a good idea of what goes into the back end of the programming in terms of your various descriptions and alt tags and that sort of stuff. But primarily as well, we've just got to remember that Google will obviously give you credit for using the right expressions and the words and stuff, but likewise, if you go overboard, it will start to penalise you. So it's walking that tight, because walking that tightrope really is the tricky, and that's where you get things like really good UX writers and come in and, you know, really very good. They can get the point across perfectly, but in a way that's totally digestible, and they understand SEO and accessibility conflicts like no one's business, and it's a good role to get in any team. I think very underestimated role in a UX writer. I think
I've been trying to get a UX writer into Donata for a couple of years. Just no budget for it at the moment, but I'd love one. Absolutely love one.
People think it's just a marketing person can do it.
That's exactly what they say, but it's not the same thing.
It's not the same at all. It's like trying to get an architect to pick curtains. You know? They might not have a bad stab at it, but you'd rather get a proper curtain picker. If that's a job at all. Lacey, you got a question here about advice on learning agile processes. Do you want to ask it at all?
Sure. Just want to preface this with, I'm coming from Agile really confuses me. I had a conversation with someone who works with Agile today, and it's still very much on my mind. So when you mention sprints and Agile, that's kind of where my question comes from. The question is, do you have any advice on learning Agile processes or Agile theory, especially for those who are learning the base design thinking, traditional UX, and learning Agile design sprints at the same time? The difference between focusing on process and goals versus goals leading. Would love to hear all thoughts that you have on this.
Wow, okay. Is this to me, is it? Don't be quiet, guys. Help me out here. In terms of how my process fits in with Agile, since I've been at Donata, I think they've tried maybe 3 different types of Agile, be it Scrum, disciplined Agile, that sort of thing. But the way my process works is we always try and work 2 sprints ahead of development, and those sprints could be 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and that has changed over depending on which version of Agile has happened. Certainly for these bigger discovery projects, you need that time to do the discovery research exercise, and then to do a design sprint and do those initial designs. So actually for these sort of projects, we're 4 or 6 weeks ahead of development, and that's really how we've always worked. We understand that obviously Agile is going to kick in at some point, but we've always worked so far ahead that we've been okay. Obviously, yeah. That's not always the case for smaller projects, smaller iterative updates. Once something's gone live and we're A/B testing, that's a slightly different process. You're still kind of working in 2-week sprints, but you might do lots and lots of little changes and move a bit more quickly. So I think it depends on the size of the project. Yeah.
There's Lacey, so I'd worked in Agile for a few years, and we again, to echo Paul, then we did things called Kanban, and a lot of lean stuff, and also Scrum. There's lots of variations of it all, and you can any sort of agile book can really really help you. There's like lean UX books as well that you can have a look at, which will also help you. So generally, it's about trying to you got one project and you break it down to many small projects, and then break those down much more smaller and smaller and smaller. And if you're working in a period in a variety of teams, it's a bit like a relay. You'll take one bit and you'll do the first sprint of your team, and you'll run it, and you'll do your bit, and you'll pass it to the next team. And while they're running around the next bit, you're doing another piece, and you just keep passing around until it gets to the end. And so what you're doing, you're biting off small chunks and slowly but surely piecing together a project. Now this works very well when a project is so huge that you just can't do it all in one hit, and you will launch what's called like an MVP, which is the minimal viable product. And you'll go to market with something like that. And the benefit of Agile is it gives you the moments in between sprints when as a team you can get together, find out how things are working, what you think has gone right, what has gone wrong, what might now be out of scope, and you can manage the actual project itself. So eventually you might launch a site or an app or something which might have 10% of the functionality that originally was cooked up, but it's enough to get you going to the first stage. And what it will do as well is it stops you doing things like any kind of bloat on a project, overthinking a problem, over developing something in which effectively costs loads and loads and loads and loads of money and blows a budget. And the alternative in Agile would often be something called waterfall, where you basically do everything in one hit. And that can be an absolute disaster, particularly in web design and development, because it contains so many moving parts. But yeah, so Agile is basically that. It's about moving in small sprints and biting off bite-sized chunks that can be measured and ticked off and passed on. So everything's accurate and everything's controlled. But yeah, I think there's a few things going in the chat now about a few books and stuff, but there's plenty of things to do, plenty of things. And that's where you'll hear the expression lean UX, again, same sort of thing, breaking off small elements and moving it forward. So what else have we got? Has anyone else got any more questions for Paul? I mean, if not, I mean, I'd like to just say thank you, but also ask one question myself, Paul.
Of course.
We have been speaking over the last few weeks. Of course, you know, the market's tricky. We've all been through our ups and downs. And some people are seeing, you know, good things happen. Some people are seeing more disappointments. For this group here, who are people looking to get into the world of UX, whether they are career switchers or whether they are, you know, fresh out of doing courses or what have you. Have you got any, I suppose, immediate advice with regards anything like interview prep or portfolios, anything like that you can pass on as a senior practitioner that would be valuable to them?
I think in terms of interview prep, I think I've been actually because I've been on furlough actually for 7 months now or something like that. I've been kind of dipping into work part-time, but mostly on furlough. So I've actually been, you know, keeping an eye on the industry and seeing what's out there. I've been doing lots of online courses. You know, there's people like LinkedIn and some other companies that are actually either giving you like free introductory rates or free courses. So doing lots of kind of extra training, so making sure I'm doing that, and that includes things like interview prep as well. And in terms of portfolio, there's so much. I mean, if you are creating your portfolio, there's so many articles and actually, is it Sarah Doody? Do you guys know her? She's got lots of YouTube tips on creating a portfolio. From my point of view, types of portfolios, what I would like to see in a kind of UX designer's portfolio, it's all about, you know, what's your process, what's your thinking, what's the initial problem that you were trying to solve, all the way through to, you know, what did you learn from that project? So I want to see the whole. I'm actually sometimes more interested in the process than the final output, because I want to understand what's going on in your mind. Why have you come to this solution? And you know, as a kind of UX manager, when I'm hiring, you get sent through lots of CVs and portfolios, and you see a lot of people just sticking in that final design, and that's not what you want to see. So it's about that, really. I think not putting too much work in there, concentrate on your, you know, 2 or 3 best pieces, and just be prepared to really talk about those pieces and that process that you've you've gone through to create those pieces. That's my recommendation for portfolio.
That's really nice to hear. It's something that we've been talking about quite a bit. It's certainly something that I very much believe in, and I've often been using the expression that senior hires often like to see people's thought processes, because then they can imagine how they would think about their brand. It's almost like, what journey would you take my brand on? How would you work with my team? And that's what they're demonstrating. The brand itself that they present, and indeed the output of UI, almost becomes largely irrelevant. It's about how your processes map together, and you show a clear strategy of thinking, that you won't get muddled up, that you'll complement what skill sets we have, that you're open to ideas, that you can bring new things to the table, those sort of things.
Exactly.
Yeah. Echo that, because that means I haven't been telling everyone complete nonsense for us. Great.
Paul, is there any chance I could ask a question, please?
No, yeah.
What would be your go-to research method when budget is quite tight on a project?
What do you want to find out here? Is this like an initial discovery project, or is this just literally testing a new feature or a prototype?
I think for me, it's probably understanding what the user's looking for in the sort of the end result, if you get what I mean. So the agency I work for at the minute, we get a lot of smaller companies come to us with not a lot of budget, and a lot of the time they don't have any website at all to start with, particularly if they're small brands. And I just sort of wondered what would be your sort of go-to method research-wise that could get us towards an end goal quicker and more and efficiently.
Have they actually got a customer base at this point, or have they actually got a Yeah,
typically they have a customer base in mind, but they just have no sort of brand. They have nothing behind them at all for us to work with. So.
Oh, okay. So no customer base, no.
Well, they have a customer base in mind, but they typically don't have a website that we can look at in terms of, you know, to work with initially or anything like that. So you're pretty much starting from scratch with them, really. You've had a couple of instances like that.
Well, I suppose initially it's like, you know, what is their USP? What are they offering that's they want to do they want to work in a particular sector. You know, why do they want to do that? What are they offering that's different? Who would be the competitors? Who have they seen that will be their competitors? So initially and that's actually something we did at Donata. We did this using the Google Design Sprint. We did this thing called the Brand Sprint, because we had two travel brands that were very similar in their approach, and we thought that they should consolidate and actually be one brand, but that was slightly political. So we actually did this brand sprint where we got them to talk about their values and what they wanted to do. You know, what was their 20-year plan? What do they feel that their brand had that was different to the others? So there's like 3 or 4 different exercises that you would go through. You can search this online as well. You can find there's quite a few articles about it, because I think initially they need to understand who they are. What are they trying to say? How are they different to everyone else? If they don't have that in mind, they're going to really struggle.
Mm-hmm. Cool.
So I can send you some links to that article, actually.
Yeah, it'd be great. Yeah,
I'll have to dig it out. Yeah.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
The Fitbit sort of device thing that you had, I haven't seen that in any other place in terms of a UX research method. Do you think that you would use that approach again? Because I saw that you obviously incorporated it into some of your reports, and I really like the idea, but do you think I guess it was relatively expensive. Do you think the expense and all that was worth it for the insight that you got?
Maybe. How many people have seen this video? I don't care. Yeah, I think something that I'm really keen on is just trying new things. I do have a little bit of a research budget, and it wasn't my idea. It was actually one of the researchers' ideas, something they'd seen. And I think they'd seen a case study with somebody using it, and I think it was particularly worked well for the customer journey map, because we did really want to understand the kind of the pain points and the areas of happiness as customers are talking about that journey, and we just wanted to see if we could see the difference. But you couldn't use it on every research project. It was a bit more bespoke to that project. Trying to think what the price was now. Actually, it wasn't like, it didn't really break the budget, but it was. We were just trying to do something different. I think trying to experiment a bit.
Yeah, cool. Thanks.
All right, everyone, it's 8:45. So just about time to. Your 2 o'clock must be going cold now, Paul, unless it's something strong.
Yeah. I don't mind.
Yeah, I'll just like, unless anyone's got anything else to ask, I'll say thanks to Paul for a very well thought out and excellent presentation. And also, yes, we will delighted to have you back to discuss design sprints at some point.
Okay, yeah, that's all right. And actually, if you think of any questions after this session, then you can find me on LinkedIn. Just
appreciate
drop
that.
me a line. Yeah, no problem.
Always try and encourage people to try and build a network off the back of these as well. And it's people like you that's making people who are trying to get into the industry have hope. So I appreciate your time tonight, and also the Office of Connect on LinkedIn. So thank you for that.
I'll also say, if there are any other kind of topics that you haven't seen yet that you're interested in, I may have some experience with that. So if there's something that you haven't seen yet, just again, let me know and I can help out.
Fantastic. Okay, well listen, we'll let you go now, Paul, and you can go and do whatever you do.
Put the kids to bed.
So I go to bed.
Yeah, put the kids to bed. No,
put the kids to bed. Oh, okay. And,
I'm not going to bed. Yeah, it wasn't.
And we'll see you another time. So
yeah, definitely.
I'll have a chat. But thanks a lot for your time, and everyone really appreciates it.
That's all right. No problem. Really nice to meet you all.
Thanks very much.
Cool.
Cheers.
Cool. Thank you.
That's it. Done. He's gone. Good. How do you find that?
Good, yeah, really like that.
Yeah, it was good. Yeah.
Really good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good, yeah.
Let me just stop recording. Hang on.